This is movie notes for the movie The Goodfellas by Martin Scorsese. I have seen this movie many times before. It's probably one of my favorite ones. I watched it at home, and it was produced and distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures. It is a Martin Scorsese picture starring Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, Joe Pesci, Lorraine Bracco, and Paul Seriano. I accessed it at home on my Amazon Prime subscription, Amazon Prime Video. And yes, I've heard it before. Yes, I've seen it before. And the cut for continuity, I think, because I'm not exactly sure what cut for continuity is, but I think if you look here, it is the way they cut the movie to show the passage of time so that the viewer doesn't lose perspective of where they are in the timeline. And I will try to point it out. Forgive my son, he is talking in the background. He's playing on his VR, and no matter what I do, he yells. He yells at his friends on his VR because they're playing shooter games. But anyway, as you can see, the way they're cutting this movie, it goes sort of around the table as the conversation takes place. And it keeps cutting to show the progression of time. This scene actually also, I believe, runs into a re-establishing shot at the very end, and I will point that out when it happens. You see how they're cutting? Right there was a cut to show continuity as the timeline moves forward. And right here, you get a re-establishing shot from a shot at the beginning of the movie to remind the audience of who these people are, and that will come back with the establishing shot, which is right here. This is the establishing shot, and now let's jump right into the jump cut, And from my research, it seems like this might be one of the most famous jump cut scenes of all time. And you see here that the cuts are jumping forward and backward in time to tell the story of the day of his arrest. And the way they do the jump cuts in this scene just makes the day look absolutely chaotic. I also think they cut it this way to show that Henry is at this point strung out on cocaine. The establishing shot. It is the opening sequence of the movie, and I believe it's probably my favorite scene of the movie. It really does establish who these three characters are. It looks innocent enough, and then all of a sudden, bam, we're hit with a bleeding, almost dead body person in the back of the car. They will reestablish these characters with this shot, as I showed earlier in my movie breakdown. And right here is where we establish that these are not necessarily good men. And this is going to be a movie about anti-heroes and not a movie necessarily where the good guys win. But right here is the establishing shot. Also, if you use color theory, red is used all through this scene. Red is passion, battle, blood, and you see their faces are literally plastered with blood from the light of the taillight. This is the reaction shot, and it is a quick cut where Henry's father finds out that he has been skipping school for months, and he beats them. Every time you see the frames freeze is me pointing out the reactions of each individual. This movie is definitely a great example of a reverse angle where they are essentially keeping the cameras in an angle so that you can continuously tell which side the person speaking is supposed to be on, even if they're not on screen. I don't fully understand it, but I do know that, or I'm like 98% sure that this is a reverse angle because they keep reversing the angle as the two characters are speaking. I also say I like this scene very much because it is really gets down to the nitty-gritty of who these people are. They're both looking for any edge on the other one, trying to figure out what the other one's going to do, while also being cordial and calm. And it looks like they finished their dinner. It just dawned on me as I was doing the final editing and voiceover that I didn't actually include the fade out. The fade out is the very last scene of the movie where he's in witness protection and he is standing in his doorway and the screen fades to black. That is a classic example of fade in and fade out. I apologize for the editing at the end of this movie, or at this end of this video. I figured out at the last minute that I forgot some content that went in earlier, so I'm just going to go ahead and add it here. I watched this movie at home on 24 February 2021. I selected this film because I thought we had to. Goodfellas was emblazoned on the editing Moodle page, so I just assumed that we had to do it, and I jumped right into it because it is one of my all-time favorite movies. If I had to take an educated guess, which that's basically what all answers are, is that this movie is highly stylized, and that's what makes it so popular and why it won so many awards. I really liked the film, and I am obviously glad that I chose the film. It is one of my favorites. I'm a fan of mafia style movies anyway, and I don't really know why. I guess everybody is a fan of mafia movies, or they wouldn't still be being made. But as I was saying, the editing did, while the editing was stylized, extremely stylized, especially with the jump scene, the day that Henry gets arrested, where he's jumping back and forth between cooking and the airport and dealing with the lady that doesn't want to go on the airplane unless she has her hat. That style editing, I think, for this movie makes it look more realistic. They have to cover so much ground in such a little time that they didn't have any other choice but to use a highly stylized form of cutting and editing.